We always need to hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Both sides of the story.
This is a dramatic turnaround from the last 4 months where they were considered as the victims of an appalling crime. Now the McCanns are clearly being considered by police detectives here as potential suspects in the disappearance, perhaps even death, of their own daughter.
Kate and Gerry McCann have both been today declared arguidos.
Suspected of killing his daughter and disposing of her body. Earlier in the day, they'd watched as Kate McCann left after her second day of intense questioning. At the beginning of the 5-hour interview, she was told she was being designated a suspect.
Both sides of the story. And the lights are all on. The world is watching now. People looking for truth. We must not fail now. Be sure before we close our eyes. Walk away from here till you hear the signs. No, 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 no. Oh, we always need to hear both sides of the story.
These are some of the offending headlines, described by the McCann legal team as grotesque, defamatory and untrue. Here we've shown 5. The Express Group has apologised for 110 such pieces. Gerry and Kate McCann said they wanted an apology, and that's what they got. 2 national newspapers saying sorry on their front page. And a few hours later, a further public apology in court and the announcement of damages. Kate and Gerry McCann issued this statement through their spokesman.
We embarked on this course of action reluctantly, indeed with a heavy heart, as we did not wish the pursuit of it to become a distraction from our sole aim, finding Madeleine.
They came to this complaint with a heavy heart is to find Madeleine. It's not to sue newspapers. Having said that, obviously in terms of coverage that there's been in the media, it's something that Kate and Gerry, with my assistance and with the assistance of Clarence and the legal team, are obviously keeping under review.
Well, the lights are all on. The world is watching now. People looking for truth. We must not fail now. Be sure before we close our eyes. Walk away from here till you see both sides. No, 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 no.
And Kate's mother this afternoon gave her reaction.
It was never about money. It was about demanding respect from our press and the media, ridiculous headlines, where there really is very little truth and nothing achieved by them.
The suggestion was Madeleine McCann's death was down to her parents. It was baseless.
We always need to hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. Yes, both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. Both sides of the
Well, I was just reporting on day-to-day developments, and that's what my job was to do.
Okay. You say under paragraph 25 that all your stories were checked with more than one source prior to publication. Once Clarence Mitchell was appointed as their spokesman, it was agreed that all stories would be bounced off him rather than the Doctors McCann directly. This was strictly adhered to. In relation, though, to the stories which we know were, by agreement, deemed to be defamatory, did Mr. Mitchell comment on all such stories?
Well, he commented on every story, that, and very often, you know, in quite strident terms, just explaining that this was part of a black propaganda campaign, and that there was no evidence to back up what the police were saying.
And as I've said a number of times already, any evidence they may or may not have found which gave them cause for suspicion of Gerry and Kate can be wholly and easily explained should it come to that.
So basically, every day when I'd speak to the news desk, normally you'd say, look, this is what we know, this is what the police are saying, and that's taken as being fact. But the conversations I was having with the news desk were explaining the information I had with all the caveats that were attached to it.
Did you tell your news desk that which we see in paragraph 23 of your statement? Namely, due to the restrictions of the Portuguese law, anyone who was unhappy about something that had been written or said about them and wished to take legal action would almost certainly have been successful. Was that sentiment shared with your news desk at the time?
Well, this is what I felt at the ground. I'm not a legal expert, but I felt that just the situation that, as it presented itself, that was the case, and I'm certain that the news desk would have had conversation with lawyers about this, and there would have been discussions, ongoing discussions, and that was the situation that we were in, and there was no way around it.
So I must persist with the question.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes. Did you share your discomfiture with your news desk?
Yeah, I mean, I said that if we're going to have any problems, that, you know, we may not be able to defend these things because we just cannot get any confirmation, and that was the difficulty.
Sides of the story. Well, the lights are all on, the world is watching now. The hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. Yes, both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. 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 Both sides of the story.
Kate and Gerry McCann have both been today declared arguidos.
The McCanns were given arguido status under Portuguese law, I think, on the 7th of September 2007.
Yes.
It might be said, well, you could not write the story. There was no imperative to write stories which you knew wouldn't stand up to legal scrutiny. Do you see that point?
Yes. But the position that we were in was that this was probably the most significant development that had happened up to that time in the investigation.
So what was, Mr. Pilditch?
Well, when the McCanns were named arguidos, so it's not something that you could ignore. And it's certainly not something where you could just present a story that was based on a comment from the McCanns' official spokesperson.
And as I've said a number of times already, any evidence they may or may not have found which gave them cause for suspicion of Gerry and Kate can be wholly and easily explained should it come to that.
Well, the lights are all on, the world is watching now. People looking for truth, we must not fail now. Be sure, before we close our eyes, walk away from here, till you see both sides. No, 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 no. We always need to hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. Yes, both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. 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 Both sides of the story.
I'd like to make it absolutely clear that Kate has never had a dream that Madeleine was buried somewhere, and I don't know if something's been lost in interpretation, but that didn't happen. From our point of view, what's happened in the last 2 days is, I suppose, in many ways expected. These are Gonçalo Amaral's witnesses. I think it is particularly disappointing that certain police officers within Portimao, who considered us as possibly involved in Madeleine's disappearance, have not been able to change their mind despite a lack of evidence. I have to return to England today. I have work commitments that I couldn't cancel at short notice. I will be leaving. Kate will be staying on.
sides of the story. Well, the lights are all on, the world is watching now. People looking for truth, we must not fail now. Be sure, before we close our eyes, walk away from here till you see those signs. No, 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 no. We always need to hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. Yes, both sides of the story. Oh, both sides of the story. 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 Must hear both sides of the story. Both sides